On the latest episode of Nico Penguin's Gamer's Guide to Productivity as we welcome Jeevan, a transformational coach, financial advisor, and high IQ Mensa member with a passion for personal growth, self improvement. Oh, and self improvement. Jivan, he's going to share with us his inspiring journey and expertise on mastering the mind, maximizing potential, and asking the right questions. So get ready to be inspired and learn action oriented strategies to improve your life and achieve your goals with the Jivan on this interview series number 20. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jivan.
Thank you very much for having me on, Nico, and thanks for the great introduction.
Oh no, of course, of course, and so we can focus on the gaming aspect. Everybody, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Jivan, since this is a gaming slash productivity interview, I did want to ask you, what is your favorite gaming system, if you still have one, or when you were a kid, what was it?
Oh, it's got to be the N64, definitely.
Okay.
I don't really have much time to engage in games at the moment,
Hmm.
but obviously I have played PS4, PS5, etc., COD and FIFA and stuff. But yeah, it's got to be the N64 for me. GoldenEye, Super Mario Brothers, Mario Kart, the classics. It's got to be the classics. I'm
Did you like
probably
the single player ones or the multiplayer one in the N64?
Well, depending on the game, really. I think GoldenEye was both equally good single player with the levels, and we'll probably
Hmm.
come on to talk about how it dives deep into an inherent need to up level yourself.
Hmm.
But the multiplayer games are fantastic as well. Super Mario was a single player game, wasn't it? Again, where you're going through the levels, and then Mario Kart, definitely multiplayer on that one. Um, playing against other people, throwing out the orange and sorry, red and green shells, and the
Yeah.
banana skins and the blue shells, the star, the boosters, the whole works, mate. And yeah, definitely that's definitely a multiplayer game to really get involved.
Oh no, that's actually pretty intriguing. Yeah, it's nothing like a throwback game system to make you really enjoy. Like, man, when you were a kid, these were the things that you would remember more than anything. Not so much the recent PS4, PS5, even though it's better graphics. FIFA might be more aligned. COD might be more aligned with personal interests. But when you were a kid, those games were like your life.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that, as you said there, with the graphics, it doesn't necessarily correlate to the enjoyment of something.
Hmm.
Even if you go back now, they're so fun in terms of the games. They're very simple, very primitive. But there's an element of enjoyment and fun there that I think with some of the newer games, they're so realistic that you don't always get the same level of sort of joy and nostalgia that you would get from some of the
Mm.
older stuff. But maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm an old man. I don't know, but definitely is the case for me.
And then what essentially got you into gaming? Was it something that you personally wanted? Was it something that your family just gave it to you so that way you would stop annoying them when you were a kid?
To be honest, it's very difficult to say, isn't it? Because I'm looking back at things now as a 33-year-old
Hmm.
that maybe at that point there was a bit of both. Obviously, kids want the games; they want to be up to scratch with what everyone's doing while everyone's playing. But also, is it a case of again the parents trying to keep you occupied so they can cook the dinner and they can go out to work and they can keep you occupied? I think there are positives and negatives to gaming, aren't there? I
Hmm.
think that you can be overly reliant on gaming, someone who spends 10, 15 hours a day gaming, but
Yeesh.
also it teaches you to strategize. It teaches
Mhm.
you to work in as a team. It teaches you to get past obstacles, and it teaches you that actually when you die and when you respawn, it gives you a chance to try again more intelligently, and that aligns with personal development in some respects. I'm not saying that you should just play games all day, by
Right.
all means, but there are certain things you can take from simulations, because essentially that's what a game is, that you can
Right.
apply to your own self. I mean, if we look at, because GTA's up there as well, GTA, Vice City, San Andreas.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're on that game and you're improving yourself as a character, aren't you?
Hmm.
You're going to different areas. You're branching out on the map. You're going to the gym. You're doing deals, etc. You're making connections network wise, and they're good skills to try and learn to apply to your own life. Because at the end of the day, we are in our own little video game, aren't we? And that's
Exactly.
where I think that those skills can, to an extent, transfer over.
Well, it's actually pretty intriguing the way that you put it because as individuals may be introverts in gaming, GTA, GoldenEye, those might be games that could give somebody the extroverted outlook on what life looks out outside the four walls of their room.
Well, it gives you an insight, doesn't it, how to think in the way of an MI6 agent. It gets you to think in a way of an individual overtaking battles. Call of Duty gives you an insight into how you would operate in a warfare situation. So
Hmm.
there are, that's why them games are there, aren't they? So that you can get a taste of how things are. Gran Turismo gives you an idea of what it's like to be a Formula One driver.
Mm.
And it it gives you, to an extent, some way to think about things. But then what I would say off the back of that is to actually, if you find yourself very interested in Call of Duty, maybe go out and paintball instead, because that's, as well as maybe gaming, because that's real life.
Right, right.
Or maybe you like Gran Turismo and driving games. Okay, maybe go-karting as well, because that's real life and it's a game.
Hmm.
Or Super Mario and GTA. That's something where you're dominating a marketplace or an area. Again, how can you work on yourself in order to get yourself in a similar position? So I'm not saying that gaming full stop is bad, but what I am saying is that there's got to be a balance.
Right, right,
Overuse in any area is bad. You can have a few drinks a week, that's fine. But if you're going to drink 17 pints every night, you're probably going to feel some health issues.
right.
And it's trying to use certain things to an advantage and extrapolate those to a different area of life, definitely.
And then before I dive into your expertise, the last question I do want to ask you, for you, what has been the most important lesson that you have learned through gaming that you've applied either to daily life or you think has made the biggest impact to your daily life?
Well, as I said earlier, really, is that you get a chance when you are gaming to try again without really feeling the mistakes of your actions. So you
Mm,
get killed in a game, you crash in a game, you I don't know, messed up on the level and you can't get past this particular level. It gives you a chance to retry
hmm.
without any uh, 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 pushback, essentially, doesn't it? I think that's something that you can learn from real life. That actually, you do get second chances, you do get third chances, and
Right.
yes, there are maybe going to be some ramifications of the actions that you've done previously, but you shouldn't be thinking about the negative side. You should always be
Hmm.
thinking about the positive side, because even if you've done something and you've lost money or you've lost friends or whatever because of it, you now get the chance to move forward more intelligently next time.
Right.
It's like Edison. He says, "I've not, I've not created the light bulb because I failed 3,000 times. I found 3,000 times the light bulb doesn't work, which
Right.
next time gives me a high probability of actually getting the light bulb to work." And we can go into the fact that actually Tesla created the light bulb, but Edison stole it. That's a completely separate issue. Um, however, there is an element of that in there that we need to try again, and have the optimism that actually this level's not that difficult. I'll try again, this time more intelligently. But when it comes to real life, people rest on their laurels, they get pessimistic, they procrastinate, and they're like, I'm not trying again, I haven't got the energy. But you're willing to get a joypad and,
Hmm.
and, and try again. Does that make sense?
Mm. No, that's actually so true because when you fail a lot and you pick yourself back up, you increase the opportunity or the chance for actually surpassing it. And if you're doing the same thing over and over again, that's insanity because you're trying the same thing over and over again, knowing that it's not going to work. Now, to
Yeah.
transition over to you and your expertise, I did want to ask, can you expound upon just a little bit on your background? How did you end up becoming a coach and a financial advisor? And what even Mensa means for those that might have no idea what Mensa means.
Well, as you said, the quote there was what Einstein said, isn't it? I believe that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
Mhm, mhm,
And let's just transition that into to my story. I was someone who obviously had high intelligence as a youngster. I got thrown out of school for poor behaviour, carried on just messing around, and did okay at school, but I was an underachiever. Instead of getting A stars, I was getting A's and stuff like that.
mhm,
Going through university again, messing around, not really fulfilling my potential. jobs, etc. Again, same sort of thing. And I came
Right.
to a realization when I was driving around for work one day. I was driving 6 hours a day
Mm-hmm.
and 6 hours worth of meetings, so a full day. And at the start, you listen to your music, your Tupacs and hip hop and all this sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to realize that I'm wasting 6 hours a day.
Mm.
Okay, second question. What can I do instead of listening to music? What's going to give me the best chance to develop? And started to come across your Will Nightingales, your Jim Rohns, your Brian Tracy's, all these kind of guys.
Yeah.
I started to realize that there is a personal development aspect to individuals, and it's
Mm-hmm.
all about attitude that determines altitude. So I was like, okay, cool. Let's think about that. I've got
Mm-hmm.
the intellect. How can I take risks
Right.
essentially to move forward? Because it's something that Jim Rohn said. If you want to have no risk, I'll put you in the corner, give you 3 meals a day, and you can just sit there. And you're like, well, what kind of life is that? And it's the
Right.
same thing. The biggest risk is taking no risks. You can
Mm-hmm.
start a business,
Mm-hmm.
go broke, you can do this, you can do that. But if you take no risk and you stick at your 9 to 5 at McDonald's with no upside, yes, you're not taking any risk, but you've got no upside and yes, you're limiting your downside, but
Mm-hmm.
the downside stop loss, let's say, is a lot closer to zero than the
Right.
upside of taking
Right.
risks. So I was like, okay, fuck it. What can we do now that's going to provide value? Because what I came to realize, and this is where we can maybe go into the book,
Mm-hmm.
I realized that yes, I'm a Mensa member, and I've got an IQ in the top 2%. But what makes a difference between average Joe and Joe Rogan, let's say, because
Right.
he's not an average Joe,
Not
and
at
it's
all.
all about providing value. It's not about trying to chase money. Again, Jim Rohn quote: uh, "Frustration is trying to find an above average job with above average pay without being an above average person." I thought
Mm.
that resonates with me. So,
Mm-hmm.
how can I provide value? Amazon, one of the biggest businesses in the world. The reason it's one of the biggest businesses in the world because it can provide goods to you tomorrow or the same day
Mm-hmm.
at low cost, which is convenience, which therefore creates stock price and value.
Right.
As individuals, are you a salesman? What are you delivering? And again, that provides value. So what I came to realize is that how can I be a valuable individual?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I need to be in the best physical shape I can. I need to be in the
Right.
best mindset, or have the best mindset that I can. I need to be able to negotiate, to motivate myself, to set goals, to communicate, mastering my own psychology. All of the spiritual wise as well. You need to be someone who has a connection or an innate introspection. We need to
Right.
ask ourselves the right questions. So I tried to find a book that had all these areas in one space. You can look at your Think and Grow Rich books, or
Right.
How to Win Friends and Influence People,
Yep.
etc.,
Yep.
etc. But they're all separate books that deliver a separate specific message. But there wasn't
Right.
one that sort of covered those those separate areas in one book that are all geared towards self-development.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, again, mentality wise, don't think of a problem that there's no book there. Maybe think of the solution, which comes down to optimistic thinking rather than pessimistic
Mm.
thinking. Let's create the book. So I decided to write the book. The book's obviously on sale, sold thousands of copies, and it's I've had reviews on Amazon where people have said this book has actually given me the drive to start my own business and make the move. So
Oh, wow.
philosophy is in there and stoicism and all that. So I was like, okay, that's cool. Again, providing value. Can I provide value on the financial advisory front, getting people to retire? Can I provide value in the coaching side, helping people go from a 5 out of 10 version of John Smith
Mm-hmm.
to an 8 out of 10 John Smith through mentality and setting goals and all these sorts of things? And I'm now in the process of writing my second book, which is about asking questions. So we'll talk about your podcast for a second to make it relative.
Mm-hmm.
People want to have the next Joe Rogan podcast, don't they? Everyone does. But Joe Rogan was previously, well, he still is, a UFC commentator, a comedian. He's been on TV. He's got this network on his phone that he can just scroll through and say, "Oh, we'll
Yep.
have Jordan Peterson on this week. We'll have Conor McGregor on this week." And you, Paul Smith, who knows fuck all, wants to have the next Joe Rogan podcast. So for this Paul Smith or whatever, he's going to say, okay, well, how do I start a podcast? That's the first question.
Right.
Okay, how do I get my first guest? What should my niche be? How can I improve the value on my podcast?
Mm-hmm.
How can I get more guests or bigger guests? What demographic of people am I looking for? What should I discuss? How should I ask questions? How can I network how can I use my own network to leverage that to build my podcast up?
Right.
How many episodes should I be putting out each week? And you can see that these questions start to deliver answers or make
Right.
you think about answers.
Exactly.
So I started to think, well, actually, what questions do we need to be asking ourselves? For example, where do I want to be in 3 to 5 years' time?
Mm.
If you can't answer that question, how are you going to plan for the future? If
Correct.
you don't know whether you want to be a doctor, a solicitor, a lawyer, a philanthropist, whatever, how are you going to get there? So goals is not just the starting point, because
Mm-hmm.
I could say I've got a goal to be on 1,000 podcasts by 2025.
Right.
But unless I am applying to be on podcasts or being approached to be on podcasts, getting
Mm-hmm.
on podcasts,
Mm-hmm.
i.e., the daily habits and the daily routines, the goal will never come into fruition. But what the
Correct.
goal does is it drives you to action. And again, I'll use a really good way to think about this. We need to, as individuals, think about what we do want rather than what we don't want. So
Mm.
instead of saying, I don't want to smoke, which essentially makes you think about smoking, to
Right.
I want to be an athlete, which makes you think about athletic behaviors, which will then make you more likely to go to the gym, go out running, do judo, whatever it's going to be, as opposed
Mm-hmm.
to I don't want to smoke, all you think about is smoking. So
Right.
it's a negative versus positive side. So when you set a positive based goal,
Mm-hmm.
you are more likely to act in a way that's going to deliver those results. And again, it comes down to daily habits, because if you want to run a marathon next year, you need to be running every day pretty much, don't you, to get there?
Correct. Correct.
So setting that goal allows you to say, well, where do I need to be in 1 week, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months? And you can track those goals. Whereas if you don't have a goal of a marathon in 2024,
Mm-hmm.
you're probably not going to act in a way that's in line with what you want. Now, okay, let's bring this back to gaming, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Gaming generally doesn't provide an income for individuals
Correct.
unless you are top echelon. Same with
Correct.
most industries, really. Top
Right. Right.
echelon take most of the biscuit, don't they?
Yes.
But industries, like financial advice, like lawyers, even lower down, you're still going to bring an income in. So
Right.
if you are gaming, you've either got to be all in
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
use it as entertainment. Because have you got the time to dedicate to being the best in the world? Are you passionate enough and also have a gift in that particular area? Because
Mm-hmm.
there's no point in being passionate about something but not good at it. And there's
Right.
also the inverse essentially, because Roger Federer, he loves tennis and he's good at it, so he becomes successful.
Correct.
And that's what people don't really understand. You're like, oh, I want to be. Oh, mate, I fell into this trap. I did university. I went to accounting and finance, not out of passion, but out of future financial reward. I
Right.
want, I want a high-paying job. But if you don't like it that much,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not great, and I'm not saying that I'm either of those things, but it's just an example. How would you ever expect to get to a high level?
Right.
Not going to happen, is it?
Mm. No, that makes you think. And just for those that would be interested in picking up your book, what is the name of the book that you currently have out right now, as well as where can individuals pick it up in order to get all the conglomerate of information that you mentioned?
So it's called Become a Person of Value, and the author name is J.S. Math, which is first initials, middle initials, and then half my surname. Essentially, that's just my pen name, let's say, and it's available on Amazon, so you can pick it up fairly cheap. It's definitely worth the read, as I've said. Second book is not yet named and it's not yet out, but it's an interactive copy. So essentially, again, we'll use a few questions. One is the 3 to 5 years, where do you want to be?
Mm-hmm.
Others would be, well, what would I do for the rest of my life if money wasn't an issue? What compliments do I get? Again, that means that you could probably do well in that particular area. of my friends who are deal friends, who are real friends, all these sort of questions that you can then write down your answers
Hmm.
in the book, which then gives you a time to reflect on what you've managed to realize. Because it's one of the things we do as coaches. We don't say to you, look, Nico, you need to go and live in Australia for 3 months, then you need to find a girlfriend and move to Thailand, and then you need to get rid of that girlfriend and then go and live in Russia for a bit. No, what we say is we develop with you what
Mm.
you want in the future and how to get there. That's essentially
Hmm.
what it is. Do you have fear of failure? Do you have imposter syndrome? Do you have fear of success? Do you have fear of being judged, as an example? Do you have a pessimistic mentality? Look, if you've got a pessimistic mentality and you want to start a business, and you're thinking of all the things that can go wrong. Oh, I might go broke. I might do this. I might do that. You're not going to start the business.
Right.
Whereas if you go in with an optimistic attitude, what if I do well? What if I branch out my network and bring in this income and provide value? You are more likely to start it. And I'm not saying that you need to be naive, because
Hmm.
there's a fine line between optimism and naivety, let's
Right.
say,
Right. Right.
and delusion. But what you do need to do is have the attitude of looking at the positive based results, because there's positives that can come from everything. Every single thing that you can think of, there are positives that can come from it, and we need to focus on the positive side as opposed to the negative side, because that's what gives us power and that's what helps us make good decisions.
And then before we dive deep into that, I did want to ask, where does your judoka come in? Is that before you have this radical shift in your mindset, or was this after, when it hit you that you're either not in shape and you wanted to touch base on it? Where does that come into play?
Really good question, actually. So something in, because I like to read stoicism and stoic quotes, and one of the quotes is something along the lines of, the things that you enjoyed as your the things that you enjoyed as a kid, so your youthful
Hmm.
enthusiasms rather, will serve you better as an adult. So what that's
Mm.
basically saying, and you think about it from your own life, the kids at school who are good at football or basketball or maths, they were always going to be good at those things, weren't they?
Right.
Naturally, because that's what they were good at. That kid that was always drawing and arty, and the guy that was always playing music and playing on his guitar, they had an interest in it and an ability in that particular thing when they were young. So what I use this quote and I thought, okay, well let's have a think about this. I want a hobby that is good for me, but also that falls in line with that particular quote. So, what did I enjoy most, and what was I excited about as a kid? And I remember getting really excited to play football, of course, but also judo. So I was like, do you know what? I'm 30 years of age now. I've been messing around smoking and drinking and shit for 17, 18 years now. I'm 30. Let's take back up this youthful enthusiasm that will serve me
Hmm.
better as an adult.
Hmm.
So I started at 30 again, started back from white belt beginning, and uh, basically started again from there. And since then, again, I've set my own goals, which has allowed me to train 3, 4, 5 times a week now, which
Oh,
didn't happen
wow.
at the start, but it is now. I actually had a competition today whereby I got silver, but I basically should have won gold. It's a long story, but the ref misgave the scores. It was a low level event though, so it wasn't anything massive. It was just for extra experience. It's only the big events that is a lot harder to really
Yeah, but
compete
those
at
are
that level. But
personal achievements from 5, 10 years ago that you weren't doing to versus now. So you got to pat
yeah, but
yourself on the back a little.
but again, this comes down to, you've got to be grateful for what happened in balance with
Hmm.
what did I
Hmm.
learn, what is the next goal. So I'm not one for just saying that you just need to be grateful for everything, because I think that you do. I
Right,
write
right.
down my gratitude stuff every day, but also you don't want to not be grateful for what you have and just focus on your objectives and your goals and your ambitions.
Hmm.
There needs to be that balance. So today, if we watch the videos back, and everyone knows that basically I won that competition in terms of the scores, and I know that I won the competition. So I'm like, well, that's fine. Let's move on to the next one. And this one was for
Right, right.
experience. What can I take from today to put into next week?
Mm.
What am I grateful from today? Well, I'm grateful for the throws I got and all this sort of stuff. So, okay, let's put it this way. Everything you have, Nico, someone else is jealous of.
Yes.
You've got a podcast. I don't know what you do outside of work, but let's say people have got a girlfriend, they've got their own house, they've got a car. Someone else doesn't have a car, they want one. They
Right.
don't even have a license. Someone
Right.
else doesn't have a house, they don't even have a roof over their head.
Right.
You've obviously good-looking lad. Some people don't really have the look side of things. So you've
Mhm.
got to be grateful for those things because
Right. Right. Right.
as you are jealous of other people, and jealousy is a horrible trait, but it's the easiest way to explain this.
Right. Right.
You may be saying, well, this guy's got a 5-bedroom massive mansion, I've only got a 2-bed. Well,
Mhm.
someone
Mhm.
who hasn't got no beds wants your fucking 2-bed. Someone who's got a Ford Fiesta wants your BMW, but you want your BMW to be a fucking Ferrari.
Right.
So
Right.
there's levels to this game,
Mhm.
and you've got to find a mentality balance or mental balance between the two to allow you to understand the journey you've been on, but also prepare for the future. And I think that that's really, really powerful. If you think about a world champion boxer, he's
Mhm.
been punched in the face more times than me or you combined, but
Right.
he's better than us. So what that shows that failure is a good thing,
Mhm.
if that makes sense. Because if you've never been punched in the face, you can't have the goal of being the world's best boxer. It's impossible.
Correct.
It's physically impossible. Like judo, the best players have been thrown the most times because they've had more
Right.
years experience, they've fought better players, they've had more competitions, etc., 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 etc. So it's not saying, well, I've never failed, because if you've never failed, you've not taken on any big tasks. Because I could go through every day not failing. I
Mhm.
would say my task today is to get up in the morning, obviously unless you die, and walk to the shop and get myself a sandwich.
Mhm.
That day's a success based on that, isn't it? I've not
Right.
failed because I've
Right.
not set any ambitious goals. But if my goals were to win goals at competitions or get a new client or whatever, and that didn't happen, that means that I'm setting goals that I'm working towards. It's like a Stoic quote says something along the lines of that which you fear is what you need to do. So if
Mm.
you're fearing giving that call, if you're fearing doing this, that's your fucking goal. That's what you should be doing. But on the contrary to that, and this is where people get it a bit twisted,
Mhm.
when we are working on ourselves, there's what I determine is related and unrelated weaknesses. Now, I don't like the word weakness anyway. I prefer
Mhm.
to use areas of improvement. But let's continue with the
Ooh.
word weakness for this.
Okay.
If you are a tennis player and you've got a good serve, you've got a good forehand, but you haven't got a good backhand, that
Mhm.
is a related weakness because that is a weakness in your game or an area you need to improve. Yeah, that is related to your primary goal of being a professional tennis player.
Right.
That person should not be at home doing maths equations because they suck at maths, because that is not related to their inherent goal.
Mhm.
So when people say work on your weaknesses, not your strengths, we need to branch out on that a bit because what are these weaknesses you're talking about?
Mm.
That's the key. It's related weaknesses that's important, not unrelated. Well, not weaknesses, related areas of improvement or related areas of required improvement, not unrelated areas. Because look, there's no point in me saying, do you know what? I can't run more than 15. Well, I can't do fucking any of this. But let's say I can't run more than 15 miles.
Right.
Is that
Right.
going to help with my judo? Am I better spending the time doing judo throws or getting specific fitness for judo? Or am I better going on 50-mile runs? Now, you might argue that running is probably going to increase your overall fitness as well. Fair. But is it specific or is it general fitness? General.
It's not
Okay.
specific to
So
what your goal is.
what is it? And it's unrelated to an extent. Now, that was probably a bad example because they are still on the fitness regime. But, as we said about the maths and the tennis player, that's something that's definitely not in the same realm at all, is it?
And now to go to um your Mensa, how did you one find out that you have a mindset that can understand pattern recognition, and two, how did you take the exam, the IQ test that determined it, and three, how did you feel once you saw that validation that, you know what, I am top 2%?
Well, again, this happened at the same sort of time after 30 that
Oh.
I decided to do this because I thought to myself, do you know what? I always say that I'm smart and I can pick stuff up, and that's how my brain works.
Mm-hmm.
And again, with every positive, there's a negative. Sometimes when you have an intellect, there are negative things that happen.
Yeah.
You always need stimulation. You're constantly fucking messing around. Your brain works at 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
It's hard
Yeah.
to focus sometimes as well. There are negatives. Don't get me wrong. So I was like, do you know what? I'm going to do this Mensa test and see what happens. And obviously, I got in. And as you said, it's it's it it's not a correlatory, or it's not. It doesn't have a one-to-one correlation with success. It doesn't mean because your IQ is here, you're going to be
Mm-hmm.
successful.
Right.
But what
Right.
it
Right.
does show, because there are other things: persistence, confidence, focus, all these other sort of softer skills that also determine success.
Right.
Success, again, we can talk about what success is in a moment.
Right.
But what it does show is it shows your processing speed, your processing power, your capability. Like if you've got a laptop, how much RAM does it have? Is it an
Mm-hmm.
i4, i5, i6, i7 processor? What type of processor is it? Because although IQ isn't 100% correlatory to success, what it does allow is it, as Jordan Peterson says, you can do certain jobs that other people can't do. Like if you've got an
Right.
average IQ of 80, if your IQ is 80, you cannot be a rocket scientist. I'm sorry, you cannot comprehend that
Unfortunately.
level of information. You can't. You see the world in a completely different way.
Right.
And yes, you might have great emotional intelligence. You might be
Mm-hmm.
great socially. You might be good at managing people. Great, but in terms of complexity and tasks that require fluid intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
like there's a difference between fluid and general intelligence. So fluid intelligence is your ability to process things. Yeah, your IQ. There's also general intelligence, which is based on what you've learned over all your years. So
Mm-hmm.
as you get older, your general intelligence increases because of everything we've learned on this conversation, for everything we've
Right.
learned in the books and daily activities. But
Right.
your fluid intelligence decreases because your cognitive ability reduces over time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's why I took the test, essentially to see if my cognitive ability was as I expected, which obviously it was, which I was very happy about. I was happy on the day. I was like, do you know what? Fuck it. Buzzing. But then I realised it doesn't make a difference because it's not something I've had to work for. That's just a natural intelligence that I have.
Right.
What's more important is things that you've worked to get,
Mm.
because that's taken the other softer skills, persistence, determination, all these sorts of things. So yeah, I was happy, but I wasn't overly proud. I mean, I have got a Mensa hoodie, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't mean anything per se, because it's how you apply your intelligence. Like, there's no point in having a Ferrari and you can't drive it. It's fucking pointless.
Hey, you
You
could
might as
take
well.
it.
You might. Have, so go on.
I'm gonna say you could at least take a picture of it and be like, "Hey, this is what I have."
Well, this is it. You. It's what it is. So I thought, you know what? I need to try and use my intelligence as well as possible, providing value. So hence read the books and try and do the coaching. Well, I'm doing the coaching side of things, still working as a financial advisor. We'll see what happens in the future. Maybe I'll do something different. Maybe I'll move into a psychology full time. I don't know at this point. And yes,
Mm.
you're going to say, well, didn't you say earlier you need a 3 to 5 goal, year plan? And yes, I've got that. But what can happen is that at year one of this 5-year plan, you say, well, this is not right. This
Right.
direction is
Right.
wrong. So you then adjust the sail and say, well, this is the new direction by 2 degrees separation, which over a period of 5 or 10 years
Mm-hmm.
can give you in a completely different direction. So that's why I'm saying that you don't know exactly where you're going to end up, because we have a gut instinct and we have a thought process
Right.
that makes us make decisions based on what we feel is going to be best in the future.
Right.
So, our decisions during COVID and our
Mm-hmm.
decisions
Mm-hmm.
when we were a kid and our decisions for the next 12 months are all relative to the information that we've brought into our sort of position. And yes, you can talk about cognitive bias and cognitive dissonance and all these things. Yeah, I get all that. Confirmation bias, I get all that. You can make things look how you want. But regardless of that, we always adjust our sail based on information that we've received.
Yeah, plus you have unaccounted for variables that throw your calculations all over the place. Like you mentioned, COVID, something might pop up in a year or two where you have new information that might completely radicalize what your thought process is on specific topics. Or you might come across a new quote that completely changes what your outlook is either on life or on what you want life to look like in a couple of months.
Absolutely, and we're very malleable as individuals. And you mentioned quotes as well. There, a quote that just come to mind when you said that was that when a man walks into a river, when he walks back out, neither the river or the man is the same ever again. Because obviously the
Mm,
river's changed because your footsteps have gone through the river and your sort of sweat and perspiration's gone through the river.
right, right.
And also you're not the same because you've gone out and you've probably had a thought or whatever it's going to be. So that sort of comes back to, or arcs back to what we said a minute ago.
Hmm.
Not, everything that happens to you changes your view moving forward. And that's essentially what that phrase is saying. But there's hundreds of phrases. Not what happens to you; it's how you view things that's important. The obstacle is the way. I can go on a right little rant here with Stoic quotes. I've actually got a book right here, Marcus Aurelius Meditations, that I've almost finished reading. On chapter 8 or 9, I think. But yeah, Stoicism is massive. The other thing is, this is a good comeback actually. When someone says to you, "Oh, you're this, you're that, you're messy," I was like, "Yeah, fair enough," but you're so ignorant to my other flaws. Otherwise,
Mm,
you would have mentioned those as well. Because as
mm,
individuals, we have many
hmm.
flaws, and
Right.
people want to say, "Oh, you're this, you're that." I was like, "Well, what about all the other shit? If you're going to say it all."
I was gonna say, so when you did the Mensa, is that when you started to focus and double down on being a financial advisor and a transformational coach, or was that something
I,
that you had already started?
I was a financial advisor way before that. So,
Oh.
a financial advisor I did after university, etc.
Mhm.
And as I said, I probably underachieved at university and stuff, but obviously you need a role, etc. So I did the financial advisory and now sort of running my own business in that regard. But the mentor thing was, I said, about 30, I started to knuckle down a bit, and that was really just a test to see where I was at, because I've done online ones, and online ones are bullshit. If I'm honest,
Right, right.
a lot of them give you a lot of them give you higher results than what you should get. So I've taken online ones over the years just for a laugh, and I've had anywhere between 130 and 145. Um, but obviously on the mentor one, it was 135. I ended up getting,
Mhm.
which is top 2%. There's two tests. One is called the Cattle B test, which is more wordy based, and then you've got the culture fair, which is more non-verbal reasoning, pattern recognition, as you mentioned, and all about thinking fast because it's timed as well. Because if
Right,
you
right.
give someone 12 hours to solve a problem and someone else solves it in 3 minutes or 30 seconds, that's because their processing power is just so much quicker, and they can go through all the contingencies and sort of spam. It's like a computer, you put stuff into
Yeah,
a
mental,
spreadsheet.
yeah.
Yeah, that's just what it fucking is. But yeah, as I said, I just took it just to, maybe it was a selfish validation thing, as you said earlier. I don't know. Maybe it was just to prove something to myself. I don't know. But I took it, got in, and here we are.
No, and that's pretty cool because since you do financial advising and you do transformational coaching, and plus with having uh, that stoicism quotes and having those individuals that you're reading and learning and basing upon it, it's like this massive calculation that's continuously adding a variable. That now you're actually accounting for. You're adding new information, you're calculating correctly, and then your 3 to 5 year plan, I wouldn't say radically gets shifted every so often, but it's almost like it gets tweaked and optimized every so often with new information, with optimized information, and it allows you to provide the best output, the best information to your clients that are seeking your financial advice as well as looking for your guidance on your transformational coaching.
Well, look, you're never going to get everything right. If
Right.
you say that you've got everything right, you're talking fucking shit. And we use it. I think you've got Shark's Tank. You've got something called Dragon's Den in the UK, which is very
Yep. Yep.
similar. And there's a
Hmm.
guy on there called Peter Jones, and he made something like 250 million or 200 million pounds, and he lost it all, and then made it back.
Oh wow.
Now, what that shows is that even if people take away your monetary success,
Mm-hmm.
your value remains. He still had his network. He still had his business acumen. He still had the drive, the determination. He's learned
Mm-hmm.
things from the mistakes in the past, and he can now operate more effectively moving forward. So what we're not saying, and you mentioned, you can take this information and bring it in. What I'm not saying is that I'm going to get exponentially better over periods of time, because that doesn't happen like that. It's
Mm-hmm.
sometimes up, down, and sometimes the downs can be so bad that it puts you back 3 years.
Right.
But what it doesn't do is it doesn't take away from your experience. I think
Mm.
in Florida, I don't know if it's still the case now, with obviously with the interest rates rising and stuff like that with the Fed, but in the past, Florida were more likely to lend money to you if you had been bankrupt in the past when you were starting a business. Now, for those listening, they're probably thinking, "What the fuck? Like, who the fuck would lend to a guy who's been bankrupt?" But the reason, and again, as I said, I'm not sure if this still rings true.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think about it from the bank's perspective, this guy's probably learned something from the previous endeavors. He's probably
Right.
learned what mistakes he made, cash flow, liabilities, debtors, assets, revenue, all this shit.
Mm-hmm.
So he's probably more likely to act more intelligently this time. Whereas the first person who's never done a business and they
Right.
want to take out a loan, they probably have a higher likelihood of bankruptcy anyway. So
Mm-hmm.
is the risk less or more for the bank? That's the ultimate
Good
question.
question.
That and look, we haven't got the data here to extrapolate that, but it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's not what happens, it's how you view things. So for some
Mm-hmm.
people, they're like, he's been bankrupt before, he's a bad egg. For other people, it's like, well, what's he fucking learned from being punched in the face, as we talked about the boxer earlier? He's
Yeah.
been punched 1,000 times. So fuck it, I'll go with this cunt over this guy who's never had a scrap. He's got a beautiful face, and you don't know what's going on. So yeah, that's what I would say, and that's the beauty of development, is that we like, wow, what was it? Character. The word character. I found out this
Mm.
the other day. The
Mm-hmm.
etymology, which is the meaning of the original words,
Right.
character means to have like chunks taken out of. That's what character
Mm.
means. So it means that for you to be characterful or have
Mm-hmm.
character, you need
Mm-hmm.
to have had chunks taken out of you. So you need to have been through shit. You don't
Mm.
have character otherwise.
So it's kind of like to get pure gold, you have to be put through very very intense heat in order to get that purity, and get those negative impurities out. Is
Yeah.
that's what needs to happen in order to build actual character.
Well, think about a salesman. He needs to have hundreds of calls before he develops the ideal solution. Now, he
Mm.
can shorten that process by
Mhm.
reading books of people who have been through that. But
Mhm.
ultimately, just by reading something, it's not going to give you 100% success rate. What it will give you is inspiration. It will give you thoughts. It will give
Right.
you ideas. It will give you shortcuts. And it will allow you to maybe start a little bit further afield. But you need to apply those things as well. It's about how you apply stuff. People say knowledge is power. No, the application of knowledge is power.
Mm.
Unless what they mean by knowledge is power is you have some knowledge that no one else has, which gives you the edge. And we can probably talk about that maybe at some other point in terms of the withholding of information from us as civilizations to keep us enslaved and weak. But that's probably a separate conversation, I would suspect.
And no worries on that, because we'll definitely have to bring you back on in order to expound upon a lot of more information that you have. You definitely have a true mindset on how to transform. Just based off of this small conversation alone, there's a lot of nuggets of information that you have dropped. So I definitely appreciate you coming on and just giving us gem after gem, regarding information from your personal life to how you are where you are today, what it took to get to where you are, as well as how you're improving yourself continuously. And it's like you said, it's ups and downs. There's no straight true line. That's the whole concept of success. There's no actual just straight vertical, straight up. It's sometimes sometimes you're down, whether it's mentally, physically, financially, etc. You have to just keep persevering, keep fighting. Keep trying. I definitely applaud you for actual trying and seeing what sticks, what works, what's not, and just keep going about it. Because as you mentioned, not many people actually try. I think there's like a actual data that says like 80% of businesses fail in the first 5 years. So that thing about the Florida thing, it might be that, well, if that's this person's first business, it's 80% likely that they're going to fail. So if this is their second or third business, what are the odds that they're going to continuously fail if they keep trying over and over again? So definitely, I applaud you for that. Everybody, make sure to check out Jeevan. I'm going to put the links of all your stuff down there. But for those that are audio only, let them know once again who you are, where they can find you, where they can support you, where they can try to book a session for you for either your coaching or your financial advising.
So I think the financial advising is predominantly for people who are UK based and they are at the retirement age, so 55 and onwards. So probably for the demographic of people on your show, that's probably not right for them. But what I would say for the coaching side, definitely reach out. You know, if you someone who wants to improve on their life and have questions that you feel need answering, that's what coaches are here to do. And that's Vanquish Transformational Coaching. In terms of the books, obviously there's Become a Person of Value, as we discussed earlier. That's out on sale on Amazon. And also the second one should be out in the first quarter of this year. It's unnamed as yet, but it's essentially a question a day that you sit down and answer about your own life that helps you to change things moving forward. What's your personality type? Where do you want to be in 3 to 5 years? What daily habits should I employ now to give me long-term success? All these sorts of basic questions, but that is your own personal copy that you can write stuff in, that helps you to plan your future essentially and understand who you are from an introspective nature.
And it's still under JS Math.
Yeah, it will still be under the same author pen name.
Oh, okay, perfect. Well, everybody, if you like this episode, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you once again for tuning into today's episode of Nico Penguin's Gamer's Guide to Productivity. We hope that you found Jeevan's insights valuable and inspiring. Make sure to share this episode with your friends. We're going to definitely have him come back on board because there was so much and we can't contain it all in one episode. Other than that, take care and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Nico.